Welcome back to Wellness with Delaney. Today I'm with Amber Romaniuk, and she is an emotional eating, mindset, gut, and hormone expert. Today we're going to talk a lot about finding food freedom, about binge eating, these patterns, like why we're holding on to these emotional needs to eat. You know what I'm saying? And I'm really excited because I think a lot of you guys are going to leave with so many tidbits to help you on your journey to food freedom and overall confidence. Amber, thank you so much for joining.
Delaney, thank you for having me. I'm super pumped to have this chat with you.
I am as well. Okay, so I love a good backstory. Can you tell me how you got into this line of work?
Oh, yes. So I went on quite the journey with my relationship with food and body from a young age. So I'll summarize, but essentially, when I was 5, my first day taking the bus, I get on the bus. All the older boys call me fat and ugly, and the whole bus starts making fun of me and laughing at me. So that was a horrifying moment, and I really took that identity on for the next 20 years of my life. I grew up in a great household, but my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis before I was born, and so one of her ways of coping was with food, and we did everything together with food, and there was always an abundance of whatever I wanted. And so there's never any like necessarily healthy nutrition or like have a little bit of this, but not a lot of it. And so I was just consuming sugar. I became a sugar addict at a very young age. And then, of course, preteens, I get access to media, Hollywood, celebrities, and everything's photoshopped and edited. And you start comparing yourself. You get conditioned that you're not good enough. And so then, of course, we're sold the false solution, which is diet, do this restriction, eat less, exercise more. And so I'm like getting into all of that. And then I started binge eating at a very intensive, destructive, level. In my early 20s, I had my first real breakup. I was very hurt. I was just upset to the point where I could barely eat, lost weight really quickly, thought reaching the goal weight would fix everything. Obviously, it doesn't ever fix anything. Um, and it was to the point where I just couldn't attain the calorie restriction and the 2 hours of exercise every day. And one day it's like this switch flipped. And I was like, well, what's the point? And then I had my first memorable binge, went to a barbecue. I'd usually be like, I'm just going to eat salad. I'll just, restrict. But I had ice cream cake and then I had a burger and then I had more ice cream cake. And then I stole the chocolate bar that was for the s'mores and went into the bathroom and ate it. Got fast food on the way home. And then the next day was freaking out and panicking, trying to go to the gym and fix it. And that really birthed my cycle of binge eating. I gained 80 pounds in 4 months, went through a cycle of binging and purging, thinking that purging would prevent me from gaining weight, which just made everything so much worse because it's so stressful on the body. And essentially got to the point where I was unrecognizable with myself physically, mentally, emotionally. Didn't know who I was. I was deep in just asphyxiated with food, either obsessing over the next diet that I was going to try and fix everything and lose the weight, or completely losing control with food and binge eating like 5 to 6 nights a week. I'm not kidding when I say I gained and lost over 1,000 pounds in 5 years, and I spent over $50,000 on like binge foods, quick fixes in that period of time as well, because I was just constantly fighting with my body and food and just in this low point experience of my life, which in your early 20s is apparently supposed to be such good years. And here I am just hiding at home, so embarrassed, so insecure. And then I went through my low point moment, which was I had finished a binge and I'd always throw the food in the garbage can because I thought, well, if I throw it away, I will not go dig through the garbage. And that night I had finished the binge, thrown the food away. I'm laying on the couch just in tears, scared for my life actually, because I was so hard on my body, whether it was dieting, restriction, and over exercise, negative self talk, or the binge cycle, that I was just like, I don't think I'm going to make 30 if I keep up this level of destructive behavior. And so there was a lot of fear and unknown, and why am I doing this? And I don't understand what's going on. But once the food settled, it was just like this voice in my mind would come in and be like, well, if this is the last time you're going to do this, you might as well go dig through the garbage and eat the cookies. And then I did. I went into the kitchen, pulled out my garbage, dug through, ate the cookies, threw the rest out in the dumpster out in the back alley, and then went and did that. And I was like, oh my gosh, who am I? What is going on? How has my life amounted to this moment? I am so unwell. I'm so overweight. I'm broke. I have a shitty retail job. I don't like anything to do with myself. What happened? But that moment really needed to happen for me because it was my low point awakening, like I have to figure this out and do something about it moment. And then that catapulted me onto the healing journey. And I want to really like acknowledge this because we get so familiar with our comfort zones, even if we're suffering so much, we will stay there. It was like this denial, like it's not a big deal. I was like, it was a big deal. And so it's so important that we ideally don't wait to the low point moment, but even if we have it, it needs to happen to help us be like, there is so much suffering. I can no longer ignore this. And I'm not willing to tolerate this being my life. And that really crushed the fear of change, fear of unknown. Who am I going to be if I'm not using food and chasing the number on the scale all the time? It was such a daunting journey. I knew nothing that I know today. So it was like me thinking about being on the edge of the Amazon jungle with a butter knife, getting ready to try and find my way through. And that's the way I would describe it.
Wow, that is really powerful. And thank you for your vulnerability. Like that
Of
is,
course.
and and what's so crazy is as extreme as the story sounds, it's far from isolated.
Sadly.
I hear so many women, even women that I know personally beyond like the media side, where the struggle with food never seems to end, where it's like maybe a month of like I'm doing really well, I'm working out, I'm eating healthy, I'm losing weight, and then 6 months of like the trenches of depression, of
Yeah.
this like emotional need for food, and then they're doing well, and then it goes on for years and years and decades. And I think that's where like the real need for food freedom comes in. And I think that's really what I love, like where you come in. So when you started this healing journey, like what was the first place that you started?
Yeah, so for me, I started to actually learn about refined sugar and started to learn that it was 10 times more addictive than cocaine and it was giving me a massive dopamine high and that dopamine is a mood boosting neurotransmitter that my brain is producing to give me a high, a pleasure, a reward feeling. And that was fascinating to me because I didn't feel so crazy or like I didn't have willpower. I'm like, this has literally been designed to make me addicted. Oh my gosh, why? And then I started to learn about the food industry and all the corruption and that they are literally putting ingredients in foods and making ultra processed foods on purpose to make people addicted to make them and big pharma a lot of money. That was a very angering process to have to go through and wake up to that, but it is the truth. And then I started to learn about, how gluten and the casein in dairy are so heightened and processed in North America and they were giving me a heroin high and because I'd eat a piece of cheese and then I'd want to eat the whole block. I'd eat a piece of bread and want to eat the whole loaf. And I'm like, why though? Like, it's on the food guide. Isn't it supposed to be good for you? And it's like, then you learn the food guide's just like a scam. Anyway, so learning about my food addictions and what I was losing control with was very empowering from a food standpoint because I started to be like, wow, maybe I want to eat less refined sugar. I want to find natural alternatives. I want to find dairy free and gluten free alternatives. Now, I don't necessarily make my clients do that. It depends like if they're severely addicted or just have like a minor emotional eating thing. But for me, I was so addicted to food that like I had to have a break from these things and I tried to cut them out dozens of times and finally was able to. But I realized that it was about so much more than the food when I stopped eating those things and still wanted to binge and eat like 10 bananas and a jar of natural peanut butter or like, bake a whole batch of gluten and dairy free muffins and want to eat them all. And that's when I really dove into the emotional healing on the journey, which was just being authentic with myself and going, I don't like myself. I have this void that I'm trying to fill with food that I'm never going to fill with food. I have no freaking clue what's triggering me. So, how am I ever going to catch my triggers if I don't know why I'm doing this? And I had no healthy ways to cope. So then I went on the leg of the journey where I started writing down my triggers, whether it was reflection of past binge eating or it was like I would binge and then it's like, okay, now I'm going to forgive myself. I'm going to pull out my journal and I'm going to explore why did I just do what I did? We've got to start with awareness. And so I made my big list of triggers, put it in every room of my apartment and started like before I'd go to the store and buy the food, I'm like, look at your list of triggers. What's going on? You have to start trying to deal with this. I started getting into different practices like meditation, restorative yoga, deep breathing, EFT tapping. What a game changing technique. Getting outside, getting my feet in the grass, nature, more sunshine, journaling, starting to feel my emotions. I was terrified to feel my emotions. I thought the world was going to end if I sat and felt. So I eased in like just 30 seconds, just feel the fear, just feel the worry. Wow, I'm feeling nothing bad happened. Wow, the trigger fell away. So it was like this going into exploring, going within and the inner work that we're often not taught to do, or that the diets and the weight loss programs and the quick fixes all keep you disconnected from going within to do that work. And that's why women keep struggling with this. Um, and then I started to catch the negative self talk, realizing we all have this inner critic in the mind. I call it the ego. That is never going to cheer you on or advocate for you. It's going to pick you apart if you binge. It's going to pick you apart if you fail on your diet. It's going to pick you apart because the scale went up 2 pounds. You're never going to do anything good enough according to your ego mind. And so I had to learn how to catch negative self talk and start apologizing to myself and starting to compliment and start to affirm, self love and reprogram my mind. We have to reprogram, which in the beginning, it feels so foreign. It's like, I don't love myself. I don't, it's the opposite, but we got to reprogram the subconscious repetition. And so that was like the next leg of the healing that really helped me gain massive traction from like daily binge eating to like once a month to like it happening rarely ever to fully stopping it. And then there was the energetic spiritual part of the healing, which was like, holy crap, I have an intuition. It's very strong now because when you're in these behaviors, you're snuffing your light out, your intuition, right? You're not connected as much. But it can be intimidating when your intuition comes online and it's really strong and you don't know how to manage it. And I was a sensitive empath. I'm very sensitive in energy. I can feel everything in everyone and the collective and all this stuff. And it's like, how do you manage that? How do you set good boundaries? How do you not take on other people's stuff? So that was all the journey. And then I really realized at that time, like so many women I'm talking to are asking what I'm doing. I look different. I'm brighter. I'm happier. I'm feeling better. What are you doing, Amber? Why are you doing this? And I started to share a little bit. And then every single woman I talked to was talking about how they did or were struggling with some kind of emotional eating, body image issues, weight struggles, etc. And I was like, I literally think I just went through all of this because this is why I'm here and this is why I'm, my purpose and my reason for being on the planet. And then that birthed the business 12 years ago. And then I worked on balancing my gut and my hormones and like your journey's growth and evolution. There's no issues with food anymore. It's like you start a business and you have to work on like boundaries and healing your relationship with money and like trust and faith that it's going to work out and like energetics and manifest. Like it keeps going. Right. But that was the journey to heal the relationship with food. And I had my ups and downs and I had my low points, but it was all a learning opportunity that led me to, starting the business and helping women and then getting me to where I am today.
Absolutely amazing. And I'm so excited because I think today, hopefully, is just really going to leave a lot of women. I don't want to leave the men out of this, but I know obviously, like your business is catered to women. A majority of my listeners are women, but there are the men out there that
Yeah.
struggle as well with this. And like, I just want people to like leave with some tools and feel like they have some tools in their tool belt to overcome these issues. And I think you're the perfect person for that, having walked through it and also having done the hard work to get to the other side. Right. So, what are some of the main reasons why people binge in the first place?
Yeah. So that's a big question. I think there's external systematic reasons if you want to get into those. And then there's a
Yeah.
lot of internal reasons. So I'll start with the internal. So it really starts from the sense of unworthiness. We have this void, this lack of self love that we've been taught to try and fill with food. We're conditioned that we use food as a comfort. You're a kid and your grandma's making you all this comfort food, right? Or you have a bad day or you skin your knee and your mom buys you an ice cream and then you get a good grade and you get a candy and like, right? So food in a lot of instances was used as like a loving bribery or like, let's feel better or a way to connect. And there's nothing wrong with connecting via food, but it can snowball into so much more. I also think a lot of the reason that people use food as a coping mechanism is because food is everywhere. A lot of the food, like I said, has been designed on purpose to give you the perfect dopamine high and make you addicted. And we have a pleasure center of the brain. So when you think about eating, this hippocampus pleasure center of the brain lights up and is literally like, remember the last time you ate that and how good you felt? It doesn't, there's no part of the brain that stores how poorly you feel afterward, the regret, the bloating, the fatigue, the heartburn in the night. It's just that. So I think that's another reason why is our brains are hardwired to have those pleasure memories be stored. And that part of the brain starts lighting up when you're like, I need pleasure, I need reward. Also, I was binge eating in the evenings. And so anytime you start building a habit, you build a pathway, a neural pathway, a pattern in the brain that will light up the same time every day. So even if there's nights where I didn't want to binge, I hadn't built this habit over years that was so strong. And that pathway is lighting up every night. Like it's time for you to binge. It's time for you to binge. And your brain can't tell healthy habits from unhealthy ones. And that's why the pull can feel so strong because there's literally a chemical, physical parts of your brain lighting up telling you to do this. So we have to rewire that. And I also think that people, women and men, yeah, I don't ignore the men listening because I've got male listeners too, and I've worked with men, but people don't know what's triggering them. Women are afraid to feel and express themselves. Shut up, be strong, don't cry, hold it in. We are so busy. We've been taught, right? Like it's uncomfortable to feel, it's inconvenient. I've got so much on my plate. And or like you distract and overbook yourself on purpose so you don't have to face your stuff and deal with your stuff. And so I think, there's a wide array of reasons why we binge or emotionally eat. And I think people don't know their triggers. There's several triggers. Like some of my clients will end up with dozens and dozens of triggers in the beginning when we start working on this. And how are you possibly supposed to overcome this if you don't know what's triggering you? And you're dealing with all these things that I've just talked about, even if it's a lesser of a level than I was, or maybe it's the same or worse. We've got a lot in the beginning, what feels like it's stacked against us going on in just our body. And then you have the systematic contributions, which is like, you've got the diet industry telling you that like, oh, you need to lose weight. Like, then you'll finally be happy. Try this fad, try this quick fix, right? You've got the weight loss industry with all their calorie counting and weighing and measuring and Ozempic and all this stuff now that's just like blowing up in people's faces and making actually because it shuts off your hunger signal. And so then you're like wanting to binge once you stop taking it. Right. So there's all of that. And then you have the food industry with all their addictive food and their multi-billion-dollar marketing tactics, right? That makes it so easy to like have an emotional connection with food and crave it. It's cheap. People can justify, well, it's cheap, so I'm going to buy this. It's more expensive to eat healthier, right? We get set in our ways. And then you have the programming from Hollywood and the media, which is like the body image. You're not good enough unless you look a certain way. We make it mean that there's something wrong with us if we don't look like the perfect fake photoshopped image in a magazine or on a video. And then we get hard on ourselves, and then we get caught up in the diet cycle, the quick fix cycle. And like I said earlier, it just disconnects us more from ourselves. So it's like stopping so hard on yourself. If you're dealing with any level of overeating, emotional eating, binge eating, it's truly not your fault. However, it is your responsibility to start doing something about it.
Like, not just trying to willpower through it, but like breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, I have so many questions that I want to unpack from this. But first, like one thing that you made me think of when you mentioned that the brain remembers like the pleasure from food, but not the regret, what immediately came to mind, and this is making so much sense. So, this wasn't even a binge situation. This was just like so weird to me. So, when I moved to where I'm living now a few years ago, there was like this or there is this cookie shack right on the beach. And I was like, that's so cute. I'm going to get some cookies, right? Immediately, every time I would eat cookies from this place, I would never go crazy or eat like more than one or two. But I would get the most raging nausea stomach ache of my life. Like, I'm just not used to like anything processed, I think.
Mhm.
But they were so good, so fresh, so moist that a couple weeks later, suddenly I'd be like telling my husband, let's go get cookies. And he's like, didn't they hurt your stomach last time? I was like, or last time? I'm like, no, 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 it was good. I would go eat it again, get the most raging stomach ache. This probably lasted like a year until one time I finally was like, we cannot go anymore. Like after eating cookies and I felt sick to my stomach, I was like, we cannot go anymore. Why am I like, why am I continuing to go back
Yeah.
to this place that literally wrecks my stomach every time I eat it, but I seem to forget. And so what you said, I'm like, no, that's so true because I've experienced that even like outside of a binging scenario, I have
Oh,
experienced
yeah.
that so hard. Okay, so then some questions for you on this. So you mentioned like a lot of it can start at childhood with food being a reward. With that, I mean, I know you said like it's not bad to connect over food, but do you recommend parents looking for reward systems outside of food?
100%. I do not suggest using food as reward. And if you've already been doing it, all good, change it now. I just think it's a very easy way to unconsciously birth using food as a reward as your child grows up, becomes a teenager and an adult. And I think there's so many other ways that we can reward children and reward ourselves for that matter without food because it's going to give a dopamine high that then is an easy like, oh, I had one, I want another one, I want another one, and it can easily fuel that. So no, I think that non-food reward is the best way to go.
Love that. That's really good to know as someone who doesn't have kids. I'm really like starting to compile a list of information that I want to file away for when I do.
Yeah.
And then my other question would be, so I've heard from other doctors like a huge reason why people can overeat is because they're not getting the like nutrients that they need in the body. Sometimes it can count nutrients instead of calories. So like you keep eating because you're not getting what you need. Do you find that when people incorporate certain foods into their diet, it helps alleviate some of that desire to binge?
Some of it, but not all. And so, yes, 100%. A lot of our food is stripped of nutrient. It's very processed. A lot of people are not eating enough protein. They're not eating enough fat or good carbohydrates. Those have been getting demonized lately. I'm talking like your sweet potatoes and your starchy vegetables, right? And like these really wholesome things coming from nature. And so, yeah, I was deficient in protein. I was not eating anywhere near enough. And if we don't eat enough, if and this is like in my realm where I'm helping women heal their relationship with food. I don't want my clients skipping meals. I don't want them skipping breakfast. We don't do fasting or keto or restrictive eating styles because anything restrictive can become a massive trigger and trigger food rebellion, overeating. Skipping meals through the first part of the day can increase your appetite through the second and make it easier to overeat. So to where if you have a healthy relationship with food in your body, you love yourself, and you're experimenting with things like that for like your longevity or like whatever, that's fine. But like in my realm, we're not doing those things because then food fears are created. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I'm rebelling. And today I want to eat all the things that are not allowed on my eating style. So I just want to bring that up because I think it's just so important to understand that variety is important and eating enough and eating regularly through the day. And for some of my clients, they're afraid to eat enough because they've been so conditioned by the diet industry that you have to eat less and exercise more to lose weight, when that just stresses everything out. And it's a short-term fix, not a long-term attainable lifestyle change. I also think that our gut health and poor absorption and hormone imbalances will also further deplete our nutrients, our nutrient absorption, and or have us burn through our minerals and B vitamins and all kinds of things more quickly. So not only is it like nutrition and making sure we're eating enough and eating a very, well balanced whole foods way of eating, we've also got to look at these other systems in the body and where are they depleted and off, because that you can be eating very well, but if you have high cortisol as an example, which is your stress hormone, you're going to have such an increased appetite level. You're going to have heightened cravings for refined sugar, salt, and refined carbohydrates. And it's so easy to just want to keep eating.
Absolutely. Yeah, food can totally be like a protective mechanism for the body. And I love how you brought up fasting too, because yeah, obviously there are like the longevity benefits, but it can be really addictive, I think, too, for people who are already kind of addicted to like this starvation cycle.
Hmm.
The feeling of fasting can be very addictive. It can be very negative. And it's also like I always try to say, like, fasting is not about, or fasting without feasting is starvation, right?
Hmm.
So you have to be really careful with those things. It's easy to A, binge, and B, like let it turn into like a starvation situation.
Yeah.
And neither is good. So it's if you have an unhealthy relationship with food, it's definitely not something to be incorporating. But so with all of this, like all the triggers that can happen, how do you identify triggers individually with clients?
Yeah. So when we go into the first session, I'll often just start asking them, like, do you know anything that's triggering you? And they'll often be like boredom, loneliness, overwhelm, stress. If I see the food, then I want it and I want to eat it. So they'll already have some awareness. And then we start talking about, okay, anything else? And I give them this master list, which has dozens and dozens of triggers on it. And I give them access to a emotional eating workshop series where I delve deep into like, because there's physical emotional eating triggers, there's mental emotional ones, there's energetic, environmental, situational, there's all different kinds. And so then over our first couple of months together, we'll identify all of their triggers and obviously be starting to work on dissecting what they are. But I often find that's where it starts. And they'll listen to the podcast and start to get to know their triggers as well. But that's how we start identifying them. And if you're just listening and wanting to start on your own, start your own list because there's a lot of sneaky ones.
Absolutely. So then if you have your triggers, like obviously knowing that your triggers exist doesn't always mean that like now you can overcome it. You're just
No.
recognizing what it is. What are some tips for being prepared for the triggers that cause you to binge?
Yeah, so I think first off is really, really in the morning, when you get up, it's starting to be like, okay, is anything triggering me yet? Because if you've had a poor sleep, fatigue is going to be a trigger already. And fatigue is two-tier. You're tired, so you have a higher likelihood of increased appetite. You're producing more ghrelin, the hunger hormone, to make you hungry, and less leptin to make you full. And also, when you're tired, you're in that I don't care, I'm going to eat whatever I want mentality more easily. So you're more vulnerable to give in. So being aware first thing off the bat, like I'm tired, that is a vulnerability for me for food. I need to make sure that I'm extra hydrated, that I eat regularly through the day. Maybe I want an extra self care check in today. Like that's how you start equipping yourself in an empowering way rather than like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. Like I'm scared I'm going to binge. Like then you're bringing in a fear trigger. So it's trying to like equip yourself with awareness. Um, I think the other thing that's important as well is, like I already said, making sure you're eating regularly through the day, being hydrated, having a pause in your day where you can check in with yourself and go, how am I feeling right now? Do I need anything? Does my physical body need anything? Do I need anything emotionally? I need to take 5 minutes and go for a walk, take a breath. Like oftentimes we're triggered because we're so overwhelmed and so ungrounded. And so being able to start checking in and building awareness is important. And I think the other thing when it comes to triggers, even if you're not fully sure what's triggering you, a really important question to start asking yourself is this physical hunger? Do I actually need to fuel my body or is this emotional? But the block that always comes up with the physical versus emotional is many women, they're not hungry. They don't know a hunger signal. Their stomach isn't growling because they either have low stomach acid, they have a thyroid issue that has not been properly addressed or being dealt with, which is shutting off their metabolism, therefore shuts off your stomach growl and your hunger signal. Their hunger hormones are so skewed, or there's something else going on hormonally that is messing with and shutting off their ability to feel hungry. And so that's where there's confusion. Like, I don't know what physical hunger feels like, so I'm going to just eat something. Or if I don't know, how am I supposed to decipher the difference? And that's where it's so important that you work with somebody, get your hormones tested, get your gut health assessed as well. Work on getting those things sorted out while working on your triggers. I do that all the time because we want to get your hunger signal back so you can know what that hunger feels like and then really decipher the difference between both. But other than a stomach growl and a hunger signal, right? If you look at the clock and you notice you've, gone more than 3 hours without eating, it's probably time to eat. Your blood sugar has crashed. That's another physical sign that it's time to eat. You're dizzy, faint, hangry, lightheaded, moody. You're pale and shaky, right? Like we know the blood sugar crash. It's not fun and we probably waited too long. And then everything else is emotional hunger.
Yeah.
So just to kind of decipher the difference.
Yeah, and that's major. I think so many people, like you were saying, like they are more attuned to emotional hunger than real hunger, and that's pretty scary. But how often have we given into that and listened to that voice, right? And not
Yeah.
listened to the voice of true hunger. And something to me, like maybe you can speak on this, but I feel like some of this could even stem from when we're young and we're full and our parents are like, no, finish your plate, right? And we're already being taught not to
Yeah.
listen to our hunger and fullness cues. Do you see that being like a root cause for people?
100%. So, yes, childhood dinner table habits. And I know it's innocent, it's not your parents' fault, but it's like the worst thing you can do for anybody, including yourself, is to be like, I have to clear what's on my plate. Cause you're right, you're fully ignoring your fullness cue and you're actually like starting to overeat and be too full. And that's going to mess with your hunger hormones. And not only does that interfere with then overeating and then normalizing that, but it's the guilt that has been imprinted on you of like, finish what's on your plate. They're starving kids, right? And then I'm working with clients who are in their like 30s, 40s, 50s plus, and they're like, but I feel guilty if I leave food on my plate. They're starving kids. And I'm like, you inherited that from your parents. And that guilt is triggering you to actually overeat. And now you're treating your body like the garbage can where the food should be going, or put the leftovers in the fridge. And when they start to be like, wow, that's actually a good perspective. Like I'm ignoring my cues and I am like all of a sudden the trash can instead of, right? So it's huge. And there's a lot of guilt associated from those inherited childhood behaviors of the dinner table kind of stuff. So we have to clear that guilt. It's safe for you to not eat everything on your plate. It's safe for you to have the leftovers in the fridge. It's also safe for you to throw it away because what's most important is you start listening to your body and honoring the fullness signal, because you're going to help your digestion. You're going to make it easier to release weight and you're going to have more clear signals of fullness and hunger if you honor your body's cues.
Oh, yeah, and it's crazy too, because like, us overeating doesn't help a kid in a starving nation, right?
No.
Like, it doesn't actually help, but I used to really struggle with a similar concept of this. I'm part Filipino, my grandma's from the
Mm,
Philippines, and she grew up in a culture where, like, you have to eat everything because not everyone has food and you don't always have
right.
food available, like, there's a lot of poverty, and it's, like, really swung into my childhood, and I didn't really realize that that was really impacting me into my adulthood until maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, when I would eat whatever was on my plate, even if it meant I was like swollen and bloated. And
Mm,
it was constantly, and it wasn't like I wanted to eat, but I wasn't really like identifying that was where it's coming from. I just always finished my plate. And I really had to like stop and think and slow down and be like, wait,
yeah.
I can put this in the fridge. It doesn't matter if there's 2 bites left. If I'm full, I can take those 2 bites, give them to my husband, throw them away, give them to the dog, put them in the fridge. And I feel so much better. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy, but I think culturally I didn't realize the impact that had on me, and it was definitely having a hold on me, just in the sense that I like didn't realize it was okay to not finish all the food that was on my plate, which is so wild. Okay,
Yeah.
so why is purging not a solution to binging?
Yeah, and just all the compassion in the world too if you're dealing with this. I've gone through it too. So it's not a solution because when we've binged or emotionally ate, we're already just in the space where we're using food to numb down, shove down, avoid, distract, procrastinate from feeling through or facing something. And so, when I was purging, I was like, well, if I purge, I won't be bloated. I won't have to deal with the discomfort. I won't gain weight. Right. So, but what I was really doing was lacking taking ownership and responsibility, and the purge is the ultimate lack of ownership and responsibility. And it causes a lot of suffering and destruction to you physically, emotionally, energetically. From an energy frequency standpoint, it lowers our frequency so much and impacts our auric field. Like the spiritual connections to these behaviors is like mind blowing. Another conversation, but I think that's what we have to ask ourselves is why am I not willing to take ownership and responsibility for what I just did? I just self sabotaged. This is further self sabotage. This is hurting my body. Why am I doing this? And now part of it that makes it justifiable is if you've associated binging with purging, you've wired a pathway in your brain that is, I binge, that pathway lights up, I purge. So it's a familiarity. The other thing as well is we experience that dopamine high when we first start binging. And we also experience a dopamine high when we go into the purge because there is a somewhat of a relief in some level. And we're like, oh, I got rid of it. I don't have to deal with it. But it's not a healthy dopamine high. And again, there are repercussions for it that are very significant, including cardiovascular health issues, burning your esophagus with your stomach acid, the teeth, the hormones, inflammation. It makes it easier to gain weight because you're stressing your system out so much. And so that's where it's so important that we start to go, okay, I just binged or I emotionally ate. I need to take ownership and responsibility for what I've just done. Purging is not going to help me. What's going to help me is getting a peppermint tea going or a ginger tea and starting to sip on it and eating into good digestion. Even if I'm full, I need to look at what I just did and why and start working through that. And I know that's a process. And that's where I think getting support with that is so important because we get in these habits and cycles, and I think it's just we get so in our heads and we get so into the repeating these cycles that it can feel very difficult to stop on our own. Even if you're told, well, it's not healthy if you do that, you need to take responsibility. Like there's so many levels and layers ingrained into why we're going into these behaviors, but that's why I describe it as like the ultimate lack of taking ownership and responsibility.
Oh, I've never heard it from that perspective, like beyond the physical, and I love what you have to say about it, because yeah, physically it's atrocious for you, but I
Mhm.
the emotional spiritual connection is so real. Like you're not learning anything, you're not taking that responsibility. And then obviously I think the probably the spiritual side is the same, but physically I've actually never shared this with anyone, but when I was a kid I used to like really struggle with like starvation, binging, and purging via laxatives. I was a
Mm.
ballerina for like 15 years, and it's
Wow.
really common in that industry.
Yeah.
So from a physical standpoint, what would be then the concern with somebody who uses laxatives after binging?
Yeah, I went through a phase where I used magnesium citrate as a laxative, so I can totally relate to that. So, these are all forms of purging in essence. It's just coming out the other side. And so, what can happen in these senses is number one, you are significantly draining your electrolytes. And I'm telling you, even just one low electrolyte is no joke. Low sodium, you feel weak, you feel exhausted, your mood's off, you're peeing way more, it can spike up your cortisol stress hormone. It's not fun, even just that in itself. Any kind of self-sabotaging behavior with food is going to spike up your cortisol. You're going to feel tired, fatigued, brain fogged. It's going to throw your gut flora off. We have this microbiome in our large intestine. you're not going to digest your food properly. You're going to have undigested food. You're not going to absorb nutrient properly. Like there's so many, it's like your malabsorption, you're malnourished essentially because everything's moving through you too quickly. And you also end up almost like causing your bowels to get more sluggish and slow down. And so I find when we come off of things like that, we can actually cause the opposite and cause constipation, more sluggish bowels, more bloating, discomfort, inflammation, puffiness, swelling. And then that's all going to impact your mood because your gut and mood are so connected. So I often find serotonin, which is your mood stabilizer, and then dopamine. So the gut produces serotonin, the brain produces dopamine. They're both going to be depleted because your digestive system is stressing everything else out from this excess release, right? And then that can really cause fatigue and brain fog and cravings and all these other things. And so it can actually amplify what you don't want. And I've seen it. And I went through this when I went through that phase. My cortisol was through the roof. I gave myself a thyroid issue. My progesterone got way too low. My estrogen was through the roof. And then I gained a ton of weight really fast from the hormone issues and the inflammation. And I was no longer binge eating. I was trying to like lose weight and abusing magnesium in that way. So whether it's laxatives, magnesium, if we're, self-sabotaging in any way, it's going to have a negative impact on these parts of us.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned like there's all these health components, but it does affect the way you look. Because my concern is that there are some women who are going to hear what it does to your body and not really care because they do care
Right.
more about staying skinny and looking good.
Yeah.
But like that is going like this is going to also hinder that goal as well. So it's
100%.
important to know that. So what would it look like to have food freedom? What does that even look like?
Yeah. So food and body freedom is really about finally making peace. It's not only with food, but with yourself, because if you're fighting with food, you're fighting with yourself. And so it's really about instead of thinking about food all day, whether it's like the next binge, the next diet, the next meal, the next needing control with food, it's like you can go about your day more present. You enjoy your day more, every aspect of your day. You don't think about food much. And then when it's time to eat, you grab your meal, you sit down, you enjoy it mindfully because we're supposed to enjoy nourishing our bodies. You enjoy that experience, you feel satiated and full, and you move on to the next part of your day. There's this balance between nourishment and mindful indulgence when we heal our relationship with food. So we will desire to eat in a way that is optimal for our health. But then sometimes there's going to be mindful indulgence. You're going to travel, you're going to go to a party, you're going to want something a little different. And you can actually sit and eat that little cake or cookie or ice cream or whatever it is and enjoy it and not want to keep going. You don't feel guilt afterward. You're just like, that was really good. I feel complete with that experience. I'm going to move on. Now, if you eat something that makes you feel horrible, you're going to stop eating those things because you're not willing to hurt your body to have a quick little dopamine high because it tastes good for the first couple of minutes, just like the cookie thing you mentioned earlier, right? I went through that as well. So it's like, I'm not going to pay for it later. So you stop being in that mentality of, oh, I'm going to just enjoy this now and pay for it later. That all clears away. And you trust your body. I think that's the biggest reason why you attain food and body freedom as you learn to love yourself. You fill the void with love and respecting and tending to yourself in a mindful way. And you learn how to trust your body and listen to your body and what she wants and needs, which is so much different than all the diet, willpower, eat this way, eat that way, that's external. When you become attuned to your body, you stop craving processed foods like processed sugar, bread, etc. And if your body needs something, you'll crave it. Like you need vitamin C from an apple or a big juicy steak that's like full of iron and all these other nutrients. Like you will crave it and you will have like mindful cravings, right? And I think it's also like about you build this confidence that you didn't have before. And as you build this confidence, you just show up in your life differently. You step into the woman you've always dreamed of being. That's what my clients always say is they're, in their power, they have healthy boundaries, they say no, they ask for help, they open up more to their feminine and like let love in on a deeper level. Their relationships with their spouses get so much better or they attract love, they attract like bonuses and raises, better jobs, start and grow businesses, like life elevates on every level. And the most beautiful thing is they finally have their power their love for themselves, and they access that beautiful intuition that will literally lead them for the rest of their lives. It's incredible and liberating when we claim food and body freedom.
Yeah, and like how much real
Either.
estate does food take in our brain, right? And how much can you free up when you're not always thinking about it? I just feel like what a small way to live, having to always be on this hamster wheel, obsessed with one thing, and that's food.
Mhm.
It takes you away from so many other things that like could really, really benefit your life.
Yeah.
So I would love to know. I know that you mentioned like the dopamine hits in general and just that kind of connection. Do you recommend dopamine cleansing?
So I'd have to look at the person and what's going on for them, because what I often find is most women that I'm dealing with have low dopamine, low serotonin. And that's because the binge eating, the inflammation, the poor gut health, the hormone issues, the deficiencies. And often before they've even started these behaviors, they've probably had low dopamine. So to me, what I like to do is heal the relationship with food, get the hormones and gut in check, get the blood sugar balanced, help them really step into their power with respecting their body, stopping weight loss and diet loss plans. And then we can see if we have to do anything else. But I usually don't do any kind of like cleansing unless
Mhm.
we're like balancing gut flora, and it's very gentle protocol. So that's not something that I really do with my clients, but obviously each to their own. But
Yeah.
I find we can like build levels back up and like regulate things via self-care practices like sunshine, hot cold showers, lymphatic drainage, hormone balance, getting your gut sorted out. Learning to love yourself is a great way to build dopamine.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the approach that I take.
Absolutely, yeah. And then so you mentioned like stopping any weight loss protocols. And then obviously when people are in a good place, there's obviously can be a time and place for weight loss,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
how does that like how would someone approach weight loss in a healthy way without it turning into this like identity crisis situation?
Yeah, and then that's the thing. We all have a natural set point we want to get to, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't shame weight loss. Like, so to me, the approach that I like to take is if weight gain is a protective mechanism and your body's hanging on to weight retention, you're swollen and puffy, it's because she doesn't feel safe. So what I love to do with my clients is instead of a weight loss journey where it's about willpower and diets and macros and all the stuff that doesn't work, I want you to get curious. Why does your body want to hang on, and why does she not feel safe? Why is she not letting go? And so we go on a healing journey instead of a weight loss journey. And the bonus effect is as you heal your relationship with food, you balance your hormones, you befriend yourself, and you stop hating on yourself and start loving yourself and prioritizing your needs. All these areas that we're talking about, the weight comes off without you having to focus on it. There's
Mhm.
no diets. We don't need to burn the calories off. Yeah, mindfully move in ways that feel amazing for your body. Also, rest and prioritize good sleep. And as you do this and you really tend to your body and what your body needs, which is going to evolve as you heal, it comes off. That's literally what happened to me. That's what happens to my clients. And so we celebrate weight loss when it happens if the client desires that, but it's not the focus. Instead, it's like, let's look at your weight loss blocks, your
Mhm.
physical weight loss blocks, which are like hormonal inflammation, stuff like that, your emotional weight loss blocks, your wounded inner child that is, was left alone when you were a kid that feels so unsafe and unsupported, all the negative self talk. Because as soon as you go into negative self talk, your brain's telling your adrenal glands to flood your body with cortisol and put more weight on in your abdomen. So, catching and shifting negative self talk, forgiving yourself, that is honestly where the power lies in shifting this, ending people pleasing, prioritizing your needs, making yourself, number one on your list or in the top. Because all of this stuff that I'm talking about, if we don't deal with that, you're going to keep stressing out your nervous system and you're going to stay in a fight or flight response. And that is where your body doesn't feel safe because your body thinks there's an external threat, a bear that isn't there, and you're going to keep flooding the cortisol through your body, that stress hormone, and that's going to keep you puffy and keep the weight hanging on. So a lot of what we've been taught is actually going to do the opposite, especially in the accumulative of slowing our metabolism down if we don't eat enough and we're over exercising and stressing our systems out. So if we want long-term sustained weight loss and we address the roots like I'm talking about and really get curious about your weight loss blocks, you will achieve that. I never sustained the same like set point until I started dealing with all this, and it's very easy to attain now. And I'm in perimenopause and like hormone stuff can start to get really complex. But if your body feels safe and you know how to tend to her, there's no need for unexpected weight gain.
I love that. Yeah. And, it's so interesting too, because when you realize that, like, sometimes fat can be like a protective mechanism of your
Yeah.
body literally trying to protect you, there's a level of, like, you can thank your body, be like, "Thank you. We
Yeah.
can release this," but, like, it's not evil. Like, even a few months ago, I went through a really stressful season with a
Mhm.
lot of, like, multiple losses in the family, a lot going on, and I started getting these, like, autoimmune conditions kind of, like, popping up and manifesting from, like, not releasing grief and not releasing
Mm.
emotions and just kind of, like, holding it all in. And in that, I gained a few pounds, and it was so interesting because I knew this in my head, and it was a really cool opportunity where before, I think even a few years prior, like, being a health coach, if I'd seen, like, a fluctuation in my weight, I would have been like, "What's going on? How do I fix this?" And it was cool to be able to be like, "Oh, my body probably needs this right now, actually." Like, I'm dealing with dyshydrotic eczema, I'm dealing with, like, swollen eyes, I'm dealing with these things, like, this is part of my healing journey, my body's trying to protect me. Let's get the inflammation down, let's get the stress out, let's experience this, heal, and then I know how to lose the weight, like, I know how to,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's not hard. The formula is pretty easy. But I was like, "You know what? Thank you, body. I see what you're doing. My body probably needs this right now."
Mhm.
And I think that's really freeing. And that definitely is like a component of food freedom where you realize, like, your body's so intelligent. And
Yeah.
often when it's doing something, it's because it's literally trying to keep you alive. Like, it's trying to
Yeah.
protect you.
It's true, but we've been so programmed that our bodies are out to get us and they're punishing us. But I'm here to tell you, your body doesn't know how to hate or to punish you. And the proof is when you cut your finger and it heals, you get a surgery and it heals, right? Like you change something in your protocol and you start to feel better. Your body unconditionally loves you to a cellular level. It's the mind that gets programmed to create these stories that the body's out to get you and to get pissed off because you have a symptom. It's like, no, your symptoms are teachers, your triggers are teachers, whether it's a weight loss block or a emotional eating trigger, and it's all there to try and teach you and show you where you're out of alignment or where you need more to give more attention to bring you fully into your power and the optimal. So try to thank your body. And yeah, weight loss is going to look different for everyone depending on where you are in your life cycle, and it does feel a little more daunting into perimenopause and menopause, but we can figure it out. It doesn't matter, quote unquote, your age. And don't let a doctor tell you, oh, once you're after 25, like you can't lose weight or it's going to get harder. Like all these limiting beliefs are such BS, right? So don't listen to that and believe that and take that on. Healing and the shifting you want is always possible. It's just we have got to find the right way for us and be patient with the progress.
Absolutely. It's like acknowledging your body. You can have goals, but that doesn't mean you wait to love yourself until you hit those goals.
No,
Like, the goals
yeah.
are because you love yourself. Okay, I
Yeah.
really want to touch on burnout while I have you. I know you
Mm.
have some stuff to say about it. And I'm like, this is just as much for me as it is for the audience, honestly. So, how do we identify burnout before it happens?
Oh my goodness, this is such a good question. So, fatigue, it's the first sign of burnout. And if we keep ignoring the fatigue, it will get bigger and turn into exhaustion. And then, no matter how much you sleep, you're going to wake feeling tired. You're going to be tired your whole day. Brain fog, poor memory, poor immunity. That I think poor immunity is the second sign of burnout. So if you get sick and you still don't slow down, like that's your body trying to say, I need you to slow down. I'm going to make you sick, right? That's another thing that will happen because cortisol spikes. It's your stress hormone. And the more cortisol spikes, the more it suppresses your immune system to try and get you out of fight or flight. So if you don't address those things that are stressing you, and I get it, we go through seasons like what you went through. That was innocent. You didn't do that on purpose, right? Unexpected things come up. But for a lot of women who are like the high achiever, they're overbooked, they're in, big goals, but they're not tending to their own needs necessarily. Burnout can happen really fast. And usually by the time you've had the fatigue turned into exhaustion and you're finding you have to take antibiotics all the time because you can't get over whatever it is you have, you're burnt out. Right. And then it turns into like mass lethargy, low moods, increased cravings, increased appetite levels. Then obviously you don't feel as motivated. And then it gets to the point where you look at your schedule and you literally want to cry because you literally don't have the capacity to handle what's going on. And then all of a sudden you're literally snapping and reacting to the smallest things because you literally have nothing left in your tank to help you cope.
I
So
think
try
we've all
not.
been there.
We've all been there
Yeah.
100%. It's like I've been there too, and it's not a fun place to be.
No, definitely not. So, how do we then avoid burnout before it happens?
Yeah, 100%. So give yourself grace if you're in it right now. But how we avoid it is we start to pay attention to our cues and we stop ignoring them. So you start to feel fatigued or tired or the energy levels are dropping. Okay, there's a cue. What can I shelf, reschedule, cancel, say no to right now? Where can I ask for help? Right? Where can I maybe start taking a nap on the weekend or get to bed earlier, have better sleep hygiene, get off my screens earlier in the night, right? And this is where it's so important. We've got to get hormone testing done because you can nap and sleep more, but if you've got a underlying hormone issue or several that you don't know about or they're not being addressed properly, you will continue to feel more and more burnt out because one hormone imbalance is enough, let alone if you're, say, your cortisol is high, your stress hormone, that will make you feel burnt out. Then you throw in a thyroid issue, that's going to make you feel twice as burnt out. And then maybe on top of that, your progesterone is low. And now you're just like, your mood's in the gutter, you're so exhausted, you have no motivation, you have no sex, like nothing, right? And so getting hormone testing done is so important because then we can look at how low are your levels, or in the cortisol's case, how high, and we can properly address with food supplementation, lifestyle changes, self-care, nervous system regulating tools. We can look at your relationship with food. You want to talk about something that burns you out, fighting with food and your body, right? Let alone whatever life has to offer. So, hormone testing, I just can't like emphasize enough. But here's the caveat: the ranges are way too big. And this is where I encourage women to work with someone who's got a, like, work with your doctor. Maybe they're open minded, but we need to look at the ranges from a more functional standpoint. Because I always say there's a much smaller sweet spot that is normal, and the ranges on the test are like ridiculously big. So work with someone who will hear you and probably look at that more functionally and say, hey, you're not crazy. It's not in your head. There's stuff going on here and we're going to deal with it. And that's part of why you have this burnout right now. And we're going to start addressing it. I do that with my clients all the time. And I'm my own guinea pig. I had all these hormone issues. Everyone's saying it's normal. And I found someone that was more holistically minded. And they're like, no, actually, the ranges are much smaller. And I started learning all about it. And I'm like, wow, this is mind blowing, right? Too many women are not heard. If you know
Mhm.
there's something wrong with your body, don't ignore it. Trust your intuition and keep advocating until you find the people who will help you.
Yeah, and we weren't meant to, like, always feel kind of bad. I think that's the
No.
thing, is so many people just feel kind of bad all the
Ugh,
time, and they're like, "That's just life, it's just aging," like, even and it
no.
gaslights you, right? But then when you get
Yes.
clarity from the hormone testing, you're like,
Mhm.
"Wait, okay, I'm not crazy." Like, there's actually something that I can do something about it, which is
Oh, yeah.
amazing. It does kinda give you your power back.
100% it does. And it doesn't matter whether you're in your 20s to your 80s, like, you can shift this stuff. But we just
Mhm.
have to find the people that are not like, yeah, it's normal. You just, like you said, it's not okay to feel not okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember even when I was, oh gosh, 21, I developed a like low thyroid and
Mm.
I was so tired all the time
Mhm.
and I got testing done and I actually was getting testing for something else, but I just like did a full panel with my naturopath. She was like, "Oh, you actually have super low T3, T4, your
Yeah.
TSH is off, like your thyroid's not really working." And I was like, oh, "Okay." So I went on like synthetic thyroid for a
Mm.
while, never really felt good on it. And so
No.
I was like, I want to get off of it. I want to heal it. So then I went on this journey with her, working on, I've been taking like raw thyroid and liver. I've been taking
Mm,
tons of
mhm.
raw organs. But then like iodine,
Yep.
selenium, L-tyrosine, and like doing an animal-based diet. And then I remember one time, maybe a year ago, when because I've been on this journey for a few years of holistically healing it. It takes a while. But
Mhm.
I was at the gym at like 3 p.m. because my life like didn't work that day for me to go in the morning. And normally if I wanted to get anything done, it was between the hours of like 8 and 12 because after that I was exhausted.
Mm.
And I went to the gym after work because I had leftover energy and it was late in the day and I felt good and I had a great lift. And I was like, I stopped. I was like, wait, is this what people live like? Like, do people just have energy to like do things throughout the day? This is
Yeah.
crazy. And I couldn't believe it. And it's actually really sad. So I'm like, how many people are silently suffering and feel like they're like swimming upstream all day, every day, and don't realize there is something that like there's something going on underneath and often a
Yeah.
solution for them.
100%. But you're right, though. Like you said, like a lot of women on the Synthroid don't feel better because it makes the numbers look prettier, but it doesn't address the roots of, well, why did your thyroid start underfunctioning in the first place? And a lot of practitioners are only testing TSH. They're not even testing T3 and T4. So it's great
Wow.
that you got that panel. And then it's like, well, what if you're having trouble converting your T4 to T3 and we need to test your reverse T3 and we want to rule out thyroiditis Hashimoto's, autoimmune. Like half the tests aren't being done. And so you're not being treated or addressed properly by like most doctors. And then you're just put on this stuff. And then you're like, I don't feel like myself. You're exhausted. Your hair's falling out. You can't lose weight. And it's so emotionally debilitating and such a hit to your confidence because you know something isn't right. But when you're not heard, it's so frustrating. So I'm so glad that you found her and that you guys have been working on that because, yeah, thyroid issues cause so much emotional and energetic depletion. And women are 6 times more likely to have a thyroid issue than men, or 8 times more likely. And 60% of those cases go undetected. The normal ranges are way too big for thyroid issues, and most women are having them in the normal range.
Absolutely. I think everyone should be getting a full panel, but like
Yeah.
get your thyroid checked. I heard Dave Asprey say it was like the most common hormonal like
Yes.
dysfunction today, period.
Yeah, that and high cortisol. And usually cortisol is contributing to the thyroid dysfunction and low progesterone. I think that's another important one for women because we do
Mhm.
need enough progesterone to help with thyroid function. And we need our thyroids to be functioning properly to produce enough progesterone. I see a lot of women with fertility issues, miscarriage, because their thyroid isn't functioning optimally. And often that's not necessarily like being looked at in depth. It's like progesterone and estrogen. And obviously those are very important for fertility and preventing PMS and PMDD and stuff like that. But we've got to make sure your thyroid is in a good place for all of that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're seeing, I mean, a sharp spike in infertility these days. And
Yeah.
like, if we can heal these systems in our bodies before we have to jump to really expensive and
Mhm.
painful and uncomfortable treatments, like, how amazing would that be?
Yeah,
So, I really hope we start to see a swing in that direction. Okay. So,
me
Amber,
too.
tell me, what are your wellness goals?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, right now, I am just working on improving my sleep. Long story short, we had an unexpected move and bought a house a year and a half ago because we had noisy neighbors for 6 months. You talk about doing a number to your hormones. I'm
Oh,
still
yeah.
working on regulating my sleep. So that's a goal right now is just better sleep. And I'm also working on bringing up my T3. It dropped a little bit from earlier in the year. So I'm working on those things right now. Hormones is always a work in progress. And then from a wellness standpoint, I think the other thing that I'm just really working on is I'm deepening my sense of gratitude and connection with myself and everything around me because I'm very blessed to have an incredible life with the service I get to offer and a great husband and just amazing. And I think that I'm just being called to like deepen my appreciation and gratitude for everything I have because we can always go deeper. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. So, where can people find you?
Yeah, so my website is amberapproved.ca. If you're wondering if you're struggling with binge or emotional eating, I have a free quiz that you can take. As well, there's a free emotional eating workshop replay if you want to check that out and learn more. The podcast is the No Sugarcoating Podcast, available everywhere on all apps. And if you're wanting to connect to talk about going on the journey to food and body freedom, I do offer a 30-minute complimentary body freedom consultation, and I'd love to connect with you on Zoom, hear your story, and see how we can potentially work together to help you get where you want to go. And then I'm on social, and it's my name, Amber Romaniuk, Romaniuk, on Instagram and YouTube.
Amazing. You guys make sure to check Amber out. I know a lot of people who are listening have either gone through this struggle or are in the trenches, and she's such a great resource for you to have in your back pocket. Even if you're not struggling right now, but you want to be prepared for moments when life gets tough. Really, really great resource, you guys. If you love this episode, make sure to give us a 5-star review. Make sure to shout out Amber, shout out myself, and let's get this word out there. You guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Amber, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.